The explosions lit up space like deadly fireworks. Admiral Cain Rodriguez watched from his command chair as another coalition ship broke apart under enemy fire. The massive vessel split in half, its crew of 300 gone in seconds. He gripped the armrest of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. "Sir, we've lost the Altarian cruiser Dawn's Edge," Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan reported from his station. His voice stayed steady, but Rodriguez could see the fear in his eyes. "That makes 17 ships down in the last hour." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The numbers told a story no one wanted to hear. The coalition fleet had started this battle with 87 ships. Now they had less than 30 still fighting. The Vorthak Empire was winning, just like they had won every major battle for the past 20 years. The enemy ships moved through space like deadly sharks. Their dark hulls absorbed light, making them hard to target. Energy beams cut through, coalition shields like they were made of paper. The Vorthak had better weapons, stronger armor, and more ships than anyone could count. "Admiral, General Martinez is requesting immediate withdrawal," the communications officer called out. "She says Earth's defenses need every ship we can save." Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed Vorthak positions. Blue dots showed coalition ships. There were 10 red dots for every blue one. The math was simple and brutal. They were going to lose. "Signal all ships," Rodriguez said. "Begin withdrawal to Earth defensive perimeter. Cover the damaged vessels." The retreat began, but the Vorthak pressed their attack. More coalition ships died as they tried to escape. Rodriguez watched alien fighters swarm around a damaged transport ship. The transport exploded just as its escape pods launched. Maybe some of the crew would make it home. Maybe. 3 days later, Rodriguez stood in the war room deep beneath Colorado Springs. The mountain base hummed with activity as officers from dozens of worlds tried to make sense of their situation. Giant screens showed the grim reality. The Vorthak controlled most of the galaxy now. Earth was one of the last free worlds. General Lisa Martinez stood at the center of it all. She was a tough woman who had fought in border wars before the Vorthak came. Now she commanded what was left of humanity's military. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her green eyes showed no fear, even though everyone knew they were probably going to die. "The enemy fleet will reach our solar system in 6 days," she told the assembled officers. "Intelligence reports show at least 400 ships, including 12 of their largest dreadnoughts. We have 43 ships left that can still fight." Colonel Ryan Blake raised his hand. He commanded the ground forces that would have to fight if the Vorthak landed on Earth. "What about evacuation? Can we get people off the planet?" "We're moving civilians from major cities to underground shelters," Martinez replied. "But there's nowhere to run. The Vorthak control every other system. This is where we make our stand." Captain Amy Foster had been quiet during the briefing. She led the reconnaissance teams that gathered intelligence on enemy movements. Her brown hair was short and practical, and her face showed the stress of weeks without sleep. "General, my teams have been studying Vorthak ground tactics," she said. "They use massive walking machines, each one as big as a building. Their infantry carries energy weapons that can cut through our best armor. When they attack a planet, resistance usually ends within hours." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories. The Vorthak had destroyed the proud Zarian Defense Corps in a single day. The Altarian homeworld had fallen so fast that most of its fleet was still fighting in distant systems when their families died. Dr. Elena Cross spoke from her seat near the back. She was the Coalition's top expert on alien biology, and she had been studying captured Vorthak technology for months. Her lab coat was stained with coffee and chemicals, and her eyes were red from staring at computer screens. "I've been analyzing their psychology," she said. "The Vorthak see us as primitives. They think we're barely worth conquering. The only reason they want Earth is because it sits on important trade routes. That might work in our favor," Martinez said. "If they think we're weak, they might not expect serious resistance." Rodriguez shook his head. "General, I've seen what their ships can do. They destroyed the Centauri defense stations in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Those stations had shields that could stop asteroids." The discussion continued for hours, but everyone knew the truth. Earth had good soldiers and strong defenses, but the Vorthak had better everything. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead. Their ships were faster and more powerful. They had conquered half the galaxy for good reasons. Outside the base, normal people went about their lives. Some knew the war was going badly, but most didn't understand how close the end was. Children still played in parks, people still went to work. The government hadn't told them that alien warships were coming to end their world. In space, long-range sensors picked up the first signs of the Vorthak fleet. The enemy ships moved between stars like a dark tide, bringing death to everything in their path. Advanced scouts reported numbers that made experienced officers sick to their stomachs. Back in the command center, Rodriguez received the final intelligence report. The Vorthak fleet was even larger than expected. 600 ships, including weapons platforms that could destroy continents. Leading them was War Master Threx, the alien commander who had never lost a battle. "They'll be here in 4 days now," Sullivan reported. "They're moving faster than we thought possible." Martinez studied the tactical displays. Earth's defenses looked pitiful compared to what was coming. A few space stations, some orbital weapons platforms, and the remains of the Coalition fleet. It would be like throwing rocks at a hurricane. "Get me a secure channel to the president," she ordered. "It's time to tell the people what's coming." The message went out that evening. Earth was about to face an enemy that had crushed every military force in the galaxy. The war that had lasted 20 years was about to end, and humanity was about to learn what it meant to fight for survival against impossible odds. Major Sam Turner stared at the combat reports on his desk. Something didn't make sense. The numbers showed coalition forces getting crushed in every major battle, but smaller engagements told a different story. Human units were performing better than anyone expected. Turner pulled up video feeds from the Battle of Kepler Station. He watched a mixed unit of humans and Altarians fighting Vorthak ground troops. The aliens moved in perfect formation, following their battle plans exactly. But when the humans started using hit-and-run tactics, the Vorthak couldn't adapt fast enough. "Computer, show me engagement 47 Alpha, Turner said. The screen displayed footage from last week's skirmish near Jupiter's moons. Captain Nicole Hayes led a small force of Marines against a Vorthak patrol. Her troops used the asteroid field in ways the aliens never expected. They hid behind rocks, set traps, and attacked from impossible angles. The Vorthak lost twice as many ships even though they had superior firepower." Turner leaned back in his chair. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Human soldiers did things that confused the enemy. They broke their own rules when it helped them win. Other coalition species followed strict military doctrine, but humans made up new tactics in the middle of battle. 3,000 miles away, Hayes was preparing for another mission. Her unit had been assigned to delay Vorthak forces in the asteroid belt for as long as possible. Most commanders saw it as a suicide mission. Hayes saw it as an opportunity. "Listen up, people," she told her mixed crew of humans and aliens. "The enemy thinks we'll fight them head-on like good little soldiers. They're wrong." Sergeant Danny Clark checked his equipment one more time. He had fought the Vorthak on 6 different worlds, and he understood them better than most. The aliens were methodical and predictable. They followed the same patterns in every battle because those patterns usually worked. "What's the plan, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Ben Morris, one of Hayes's best officers. Hayes smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We're going to make them think we're running scared. Then we're going to kill them when they get overconfident." The plan was simple and dangerous. Hayes would split her force into 3 groups. One group would appear to retreat, drawing the Vorthak forward. The other 2 groups would circle around and attack from behind. It was exactly the kind of tactic that military schools taught you never to use. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Cross was making discoveries that would change everything. Her research into human biology had revealed something remarkable. The human brain processed stress and fear differently than other species. While most aliens became confused under pressure, humans actually got better at making quick decisions. "General Martinez, you need to see this," Cross said, bursting into the command center with a tablet full of data. Martinez looked up from the defensive plans she was reviewing. "Doctor, I'm a little busy preparing for the end of the world." "That's exactly why you need to see this," Cross insisted. She activated a holographic display showing brain scans from different species. "Look at these neural patterns during combat stress. The images showed alien brains shutting down higher functions when faced with chaos and uncertainty. But human brains lit up like Christmas trees. Areas responsible for creativity and problem-solving became more active, not less. Evolution made us persistence hunters, Cross explained. We chased prey for days across African plains. Our ancestors had to make split-second decisions while exhausted, dehydrated, and under extreme stress. That's why we can think clearly when everything goes wrong. Meanwhile, Hayes's mission was proving the doctor's theories correct. Her unit had engaged the Vorthak patrol exactly as planned. The aliens took the bait and pursued what they thought was a retreating enemy. When Hayes sprung her trap, the Vorthak couldn't adjust their tactics fast enough. Enemy ships are breaking formation, Morris reported. They're trying to regroup. Too late for that, Hayes replied. She watched her Marines use mining charges to create an artificial asteroid field. The Vorthak flew right into it, their predictable movements making them easy targets. Within an hour, Hayes had destroyed an entire Vorthak squadron, using weapons that were barely more advanced than firecrackers. The victory sent shockwaves through both coalition and enemy command structures. Clark's resistance network was having similar success on occupied worlds. Human civilians were fighting back in ways that baffled Vorthak occupation forces. Factory workers sabotaged production lines. Farmers poisoned food supplies destined for alien troops. Even children learned to build bombs from household chemicals. The key is unpredictability, Clark explained in an encrypted message to other resistance leaders. The Vorthak plan for everything, but they can't plan for crazy, so we give them crazy. On the planet Rigel 7, a group of human refugees had turned an entire city into a death trap. They used the sewage system to move around unseen. They booby-trapped buildings to collapse when aliens entered. They even trained local animals to attack Vorthak soldiers. The occupation forces requested reinforcements 3 times. Their reports described human behavior as incomprehensible and tactically unsound. What they didn't understand was that tactics that seemed insane often worked when fighting an enemy that expected rational behavior. Turner compiled all the data into a comprehensive report. Human forces were winning small battles even when they should have lost. The secret wasn't better weapons or superior training. It was the human ability to adapt, improvise, and do the unexpected. "Sir, this changes everything," Turner told General Martinez. "We've been trying to fight like them. We should be fighting like us." Martinez read the report twice. The implications were staggering. Every military doctrine in coalition space assumed that disciplined, organized forces would always defeat chaotic ones. But humans thrived in chaos. They got stronger when everything fell apart. "Dr. Cross, can other species learn to fight like humans?" Martinez asked. Cross shook her head. "Not completely, but they can learn to work with humans. Mixed units perform much better than pure alien forces. The humans provide creativity and adaptability. The aliens provide discipline and technical expertise." Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human-led resistance movements were growing bolder. Coalition forces with human advisors were achieving impossible victories. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, was starting to show cracks. But the real test was still coming. The main Vorthak fleet was only 2 days away from Earth. Warmaster Threx commanded 600 ships filled with warriors who had never lost a major battle. They expected to crush humanity's home world in a matter of hours. What they didn't expect was to face an enemy that broke every rule of civilized warfare, an enemy that got more dangerous when cornered, an enemy that refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Turner looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. 43 ships against 600. It should have been suicide. But for the first time since the war began, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. General Martinez stood before the largest war council in human history. Officers from every surviving coalition world filled the underground auditorium. The air was thick with tension and the smell of too many people in one place. In 18 hours, the Vorthak fleet would arrive at Earth. "We're going to do something that goes against every military textbook ever written," Martinez announced. "We're going to fight dirty." A Zarian admiral raised his scaled hand. General, with respect, unconventional tactics cannot overcome such overwhelming odds. Their fleet has 600 ships. Martinez nodded toward Major Turner, who activated the main display. Combat footage from dozens of recent battles filled the screen. Every clip showed the same thing: human forces winning against superior numbers through methods that looked like pure chaos. "Commander Wright, tell them about New York," Martinez said. Commander Alex Wright stepped forward. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke from the burning city above them. He had been fighting Vorthak advance scouts for 3 days straight. They landed 2,000 troops in Manhattan, Wright began. Standard Vorthak doctrine said they should have controlled the island in 6 hours. It's been 72 hours and we're still killing them. Wright pulled up tactical maps showing the urban battlefield. Red markers showed Vorthak positions. Blue markers showed human defenders. The pattern looked like a spider web of intersecting lines and scattered dots. We turned every building into a fortress, every street into a trap. We don't hold territory like normal armies. We move through sewers, subway tunnels, and building basements. The aliens can't predict where we'll strike next because we don't know ourselves until we do it. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Parker had been quiet during the briefing. He commanded a mixed unit of humans and Altarians that had achieved 3 impossible victories in the past month. Now he stood and addressed the council. "The key is teaching our alien allies to embrace controlled chaos," Parker said. "Altarians are naturally disciplined. That's usually good. But when they fight alongside humans, they need to learn when to break the rules." Parker activated his own display showing training footage. Human soldiers worked with Altarian troops, teaching them guerrilla tactics and irregular warfare. The aliens struggled at first, but gradually learned to adapt. "Yesterday, my mixed unit destroyed a Vorthak supply convoy, using nothing but stolen mining equipment and pure stubbornness," Parker continued. "The Altarians provided technical expertise. The humans provided insane ideas that actually worked." Captain Foster had returned from her latest reconnaissance mission just hours earlier. Her team had done something that should have been impossible. They had boarded and captured a Vorthak command ship. "Tell them how you did it," Martinez ordered. Foster grinned. Her face was dirty and her hair was singed from energy weapon near misses, but her eyes were bright with victory. "We used their own logic against them," she explained. "Vorthak security systems are designed to stop organized attacks. They scan for weapons, look for military formations, and expect enemies to follow predictable patterns." The room leaned forward as Foster described her mission. Her team had approached the enemy ship in a damaged freighter that was broadcasting distress signals. Half her people were disguised as refugees. The other half were hidden in cargo containers. The Vorthak brought us aboard because their computers said we weren't a threat. 5 humans in civilian clothes with improvised weapons. Their security protocols didn't even recognize us as enemies. Once inside, Foster's team had moved through the ship using maintenance shafts and service corridors. They planted charges in critical systems and extracted command codes before escaping in stolen Vorthak shuttles. The entire operation took 40 minutes. "The intelligence we gathered shows a critical weakness in their command structure," Foster continued. "Vorthak commanders can't make quick decisions without approval from higher authority. If we can disrupt their communications even briefly, their entire fleet becomes confused." Turner stood up with a tablet full of analysis. "Captain Foster's raid proves our theories. Human unpredictability is more than just tactics. It's a psychological weapon that the Vorthak can't counter." The data was overwhelming. Human forces were achieving victory rates that shouldn't have been possible. More importantly, coalition units with human leadership were performing dramatically better than pure alien forces. "We're recommending a complete restructuring of our defensive strategy," Turner announced. "Instead of trying to match their technology, we use our advantages. Speed, adaptability, and the willingness to try things that look insane." Dr. Cross had been studying Vorthak prisoners captured during recent battles. Her research revealed critical flaws in enemy psychology that could be exploited. "They view warfare as a mathematical problem," Cross explained. "Input variables, calculate optimal solutions, execute plans with precision. But humans don't fight mathematically. We fight emotionally, instinctively, chaotically." Cross showed brain scans from captured Vorthak soldiers. When faced with unpredictable human tactics, the aliens showed signs of extreme stress and decision paralysis. Their commanders are trained to handle every possible scenario, Cross continued. But they can't handle impossible scenarios. When we do things that shouldn't work, their entire decision-making process breaks down. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. On Rigel 7, Sergeant Clark's resistance network had just destroyed a major Vorthak processing facility using tactics so unconventional that enemy commanders were requesting psychological evaluations of their own troops. Similar stories came from dozens of occupied worlds. Human-led insurgencies were growing bolder and more successful. The Vorthak Empire was starting to crack under pressure from an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Admiral Rodriguez had been listening quietly from the back of the room. Now he stepped forward with grim determination. "Ladies and gentlemen, in 18 hours we face the largest enemy fleet in galactic history," he said. "They have better ships, better weapons, and better technology. They've never lost a major battle." Rodriguez paused and looked around the room at faces from a dozen different worlds. Humans, Altarians, Xerions, and others who had come together to make a final stand against tyranny. But they've never fought an enemy like us before. They expect us to line up our ships and trade shots like civilized beings. Instead, we're going to show them what humans do when everything looks hopeless. Martinez stepped back to the podium. Operation Thunderbolt begins in 6 hours. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have left will be thrown at them. We're going to hit them so hard and so unpredictably that they won't know which way is up. The officers began filing out to prepare their forces. As they left, many were thinking the same thing. This was either going to be the greatest victory in military history or the most spectacular defeat ever recorded. Outside the mountain base, the first Vorthak scout ships were already entering the solar system. Their sensors detected Earth's defenses and transmitted the data to War Master Threx. The alien commander studied the reports and was pleased. Humanity's last stand would be over quickly. What Threx didn't realize was that he was about to face an enemy that got stronger when cornered, more creative when desperate, and absolutely refused to quit even when defeat was certain. The Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace like a black wall of death. War Master Threx stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. 600 ships moved in perfect formation around him. Victory was certain. "Begin the attack," Threx commanded in his cold, reptilian voice. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. Instead of meeting the enemy in traditional battle lines, the human fleet scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Ships broke formation and flew in patterns that made no tactical sense. Admiral Rodriguez commanded the chaos from the bridge of the Liberty. "All ships execute Plan Madness. Repeat, execute Plan Madness." The Vorthak computers couldn't process what they were seeing. Coalition ships dove toward Earth's atmosphere, using the planet's gravity to slingshot around at impossible angles. Others hid behind space stations and asteroids, popping out to fire before disappearing again. "Sir, their movements are completely random," reported Threx's tactical officer. "Our targeting systems cannot predict their flight paths." Threx watched. Human fighters weave between his massive dreadnoughts like insects. They were too small and too fast for his heavy weapons to track. Worse, they seemed to have no plan at all. They attacked from every direction at once. Captain Hayes led a squadron of modified cargo ships against the enemy's left flank. Her vessels looked like junk, but they carried the heaviest weapons humanity could build. More importantly, they flew like pilots who had lost their minds. "Red Squadron, follow my lead," Hayes transmitted. "Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to confuse them until they make mistakes." Hayes dove her ship between 2 Vorthak cruisers, firing in all directions. Her pilots followed, turning the space between the enemy ships into a swirling dogfight that the aliens' computers couldn't understand. On Earth's surface, the ground battle was equally chaotic. Colonel Blake had abandoned every principle of defensive warfare. Instead of holding fixed positions, his troops moved constantly through underground tunnels and building ruins. Enemy landing force is requesting air support. reported a Vorthak ground commander. "They cannot locate our defensive positions." The reason was simple. Humanity didn't have defensive positions. They had thousands of small groups that appeared, attacked, and vanished before the enemy could respond. Blake's forces used sewers, subway systems, and building basements to move unseen through the battlefield. Major Turner commanded a special unit that did nothing but cause confusion. His ships flew into the middle of Vorthak formations and broadcast false radio signals. They pretended to be damaged vessels calling for help, then exploded when enemy ships came to investigate. "This is insane," muttered Turner's co-pilot as they flew directly at a Vorthak battleship. "We're going to die." "Probably," Turner agreed. "But we're going to make them think we're crazy first." Turner's ship fired everything it had at the massive enemy vessel, doing almost no damage. But the attack confused the Vorthak enough that they turned their main guns away from more dangerous targets. 3 coalition cruisers used that distraction to destroy 2 enemy destroyers. Dr. Cross watched the battle from the command center, studying Vorthak communication patterns. Her analysis showed that enemy commanders were becoming increasingly frustrated with human tactics. General Martinez, "Look at this," Cross said, pointing to intercepted alien transmissions. "Their field commanders keep requesting new orders because nothing we're doing matches their battle plans." The Vorthak had trained for every possible scenario except one, fighting an enemy that ignored all military logic. Their commanders sent increasingly frantic messages to higher command, asking how to counter tactics that shouldn't work. Captain Foster had taken her team on the most dangerous mission of the war. They were aboard a stolen Vorthak shuttle, flying directly toward Threx's flagship. Their goal was simple and probably suicidal: board the enemy command ship and cause as much chaos as possible. "Remember, we're not trying to capture the ship," Foster told her Marines. "We're trying to make their commanders so confused they can't think straight." Foster's shuttle used Vorthak identification codes stolen during her previous raid. The enemy's security systems recognized the codes and allowed the shuttle to dock. 12 human Marines stepped aboard the most powerful warship in the galaxy. What followed was 30 minutes of pure chaos. Foster's team split up and ran through the ship, setting off fire alarms, disrupting computer systems, and generally making the aliens think they were under massive attack. The Vorthak crew responded to threats that didn't exist while ignoring the real danger. Meanwhile, Sergeant Clark's resistance network activated sleeper cells throughout the galaxy. On 50 different worlds, human-trained insurgents struck simultaneously at Vorthak supply lines and communication relays. The coordinated attack stretched enemy resources to the breaking point. The tide of battle began to turn when Vorthak commanders started making critical errors. Confused by tactics they couldn't understand, they began second-guessing their own decisions. Ships broke formation to chase targets that weren't really threats. Ground forces wasted ammunition firing at shadows. Admiral Rodriguez saw the opportunity and seized it. "All ships execute Phase 2, hit them where they're weakest." The scattered coalition fleet suddenly coordinated their attacks. While the Vorthak were distracted by hundreds of small threats, powerful human warships struck at the enemy's most vulnerable points. The aliens had spread their defenses too thin, trying to counter every possible attack. Threx watched his perfect formation collapse into chaos. His ships were scattered across the solar system, chasing human vessels that seemed to multiply like bacteria. Every time his forces destroyed one target, 3 more appeared from nowhere. "How many ships do they have?" Threx demanded. "The same number as before, sir," his tactical officer replied, "but they appear to be everywhere at once." The truth was simpler than the Vorthak could understand. Human ships were reusing identification codes, broadcasting false signals, and creating electronic ghosts that registered as real vessels on alien sensors. A single human fighter could appear to be an entire squadron if its pilot was creative enough. Foster's team had reached the flagship's command center. They didn't try to capture it. Instead, they planted devices that filled the ship's communication systems with garbage data. Every message sent to other Vorthak ships now included random noise that made coordination impossible. "Enemy flagship is broadcasting contradictory orders," reported Coalition intelligence. "Their fleet commanders don't know which signals are real The battle reached its climax when Turner's Suicide Squadron made their final attack. 50 small ships loaded with explosives flew directly at the Vorthak command vessels. The aliens shot down most of them, but the few that got through caused devastating damage. More importantly, the desperate attack convinced Threx that humanity had gone completely insane. No rational commander would throw away ships like that, unless they had lost all hope. The alien leader began to worry that he was fighting enemies who preferred death to surrender. "Sir, our casualty reports are coming in," reported Threx's aide. "We have lost over 200 ships." Threx stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His fleet still outnumbered the humans, but the numbers were much closer than they should have been. Worse, his forces were scattered and confused while the enemy seemed to be gaining strength. For the first time in his military career, War Master Threx began to doubt that victory was certain. He was fighting an enemy that broke every rule of warfare, and somehow it was working. The humans weren't winning through superior firepower or better technology. They were winning through sheer, stubborn refusal to fight like civilized beings. And for the first time in 20 years, the Vorthak Empire was losing a major battle. The battle for Earth lasted 14 hours. When it ended, War Master Threx stared at his tactical display in complete shock. Half his fleet was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The humans, who should have been crushed in the first hour, were still fighting. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet," his communications officer reported with disbelief. Threx couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans were demanding his surrender. After 20 years of victories, the Vorthak Empire was being beaten by primitives who fought like madmen. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching Vorthak ships retreat toward the edge of the solar system. His own fleet was battered and barely holding together, but they had done the impossible. They had won. "Signal War Master Threx," Rodriguez ordered. "Tell him he has 1 hour to withdraw his forces from our system, or we'll finish what we started." The alien commander knew he had lost. His remaining ships were scattered and demoralized. His ground forces on Earth were trapped in urban warfare they couldn't understand. For the first time in Vorthak history, a major invasion had failed completely. 3 months later, General Martinez stood before the Coalition Assembly on the newly liberated world of Alteria Prime. The hall was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to hear how humanity had turned the tide of an unwinnable war. "The Vorthak Empire is collapsing," Martinez announced to thunderous applause. 17 worlds have declared independence in the past month. Their military commanders are abandoning positions they've held for decades. Captain Foster had been promoted to colonel and now commanded peacekeeping forces throughout the former Vorthak territories. Her job was to help establish new governments based on principles of freedom and self-determination. The key was showing other species that the Vorthak could be beaten, Foster explained to a gathering of resistance leaders on Rigel 7. Once people saw that the aliens weren't invincible, rebellions started everywhere. The ripple effects of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On world after world, oppressed populations rose up against their Vorthak occupiers. The aliens found themselves fighting dozens of insurgencies simultaneously, each one using tactics learned from human advisors. Colonel Blake established the Human Military Advisory Corps, an organization dedicated to teaching other species how to fight using unconventional methods. His instructors traveled to liberated worlds, showing local forces how to turn their weaknesses into strengths. "The most important lesson is psychological," Blake told his new recruits. "You have to believe that victory is possible even when everything looks hopeless. That belief changes how you fight." Dr. Cross founded the Institute for Comparative Combat Psychology on Earth. Her research helped optimize mixed-species military units by understanding what each race brought to warfare. The institute became a center for developing new forms of interspecies cooperation. "Humans provide creativity and adaptability," Cross explained in her famous lecture series. "Alterians contribute discipline and technical expertise. Xerions offer strategic thinking and patience. Together, we're stronger than any single species fighting alone." Major Turner, now promoted to general, commanded the new Coalition Defense Force. His organization combined the best technologies and tactics from across the galaxy under human leadership. For the first time in galactic history, the Coalition had become a unified military power. "We're not just defending our worlds anymore," Turner announced at the opening of the new Coalition Military Academy. "We're exploring beyond the galactic rim, seeking new civilizations and new opportunities for peace and cooperation." Admiral Rodriguez received command of the largest fleet in Coalition history. His ships patrolled former Vorthak space, ensuring that liberated worlds remained free while helping to establish trade routes and diplomatic relations. The war crimes trials began 6 months after the Vorthak defeat. War Master Threx and other high-ranking alien officials faced justice for their atrocities. But many Coalition leaders pushed for mercy rather than revenge, understanding that lasting peace required healing rather than hatred. Sergeant Clark returned to Earth a hero, but he preferred working with young people rather than accepting medals. He established training programs that taught civilian populations how to defend themselves against future threats. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Clark told his students, "but humans have proven that courage and determination can overcome any obstacle. The most important weapon you have is the refusal to give up." 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Captain Hayes led the first human exploration mission beyond the galactic frontier. Her fleet carried scientists, diplomats, and colonists, seeking new worlds and new opportunities. The mission represented humanity's transition from survivors to leaders. The former Vorthak Empire became a collection of independent worlds united by trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Many alien species adopted human governmental principles, creating democracies based on individual rights and representative leadership. Peace didn't come easily. Some Vorthak commanders refused to surrender and continued fighting guerrilla campaigns from hidden bases. Pirates and raiders tried to exploit the power vacuum left by the Empire's collapse, but the Coalition's new military doctrine proved effective against these threats as well. 10 years after the war, General Martinez gave her final speech as Supreme Commander of Coalition forces. She stood before an audience that included representatives from over 200 worlds, many of them former Vorthak territories that were now thriving democracies. "Humanity didn't win this war through superior technology or greater numbers," Martinez said. "We won because we refused to accept defeat. We won because we learned to turn chaos into opportunity. Most importantly, we won because we inspired others to believe that freedom was worth fighting for." The memorial to the war's victims was built on Earth, but similar monuments appeared on worlds throughout the galaxy. They honored not just the dead, but the idea that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they stood together against tyranny. The galaxy was still dangerous. New threats emerged regularly, and old enemies sometimes returned. But the Coalition faced these challenges with confidence born from experience. They had proven that unity, determination, and the willingness to think differently could overcome any obstacle. Children on 100 worlds grew up hearing stories about the humans who refused to surrender when all hope was lost. They learned that the most powerful weapon wasn't energy beams or nuclear missiles, but the courage to keep fighting when victory seemed impossible. The war that nearly destroyed civilization became the foundation for a new age of peace and prosperity. Humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than military victory. They had given it hope.